Hello and welcome to this new video for me. Today I want to break down the finals of the Stockholm Regionals. I played against Eric Rios in a phenomenal final set, but there were so many turns nobody really understood. I watched some other analysis, I watched some VODs, live reactions, and nobody really understood what actually happened in the game. So I wanted to break it down today and I will analyze it turn per turn. I made the video 1.25 speed. I will stop when needed. It's just so that you understand what was going through Eric's head and what was going through my head. There were some really interesting turns that were really crucial, but nobody really highlighted them. So that's why I thought I want to give this a quick analysis. So yeah. What you need to know is that Eric and I played against each other in the Swiss stage. And in the Swiss stage, he was able to beat me 2-1. And in game 1 and game 2, I led with Caluex Smeargle and I brought Urshifu and Didi in the back. I did not bring Torkoal, but in game 3, I decided to bring Torkoal instead of the Urshifu. And what he did was that I think both in game 1 and game 2, he led with Incin Lunala with Willa Cornerstone in the back. And I had a really interesting matchup there because I had to go for some reads. And then in game 3, where I changed my back Pokemon, he changed his lead because he led with Cornerstone instead of Incineroar. The problem is that the Incineroar has Taunt, and because of Taunt Incineroar, I am forced to lead Smeargle because I cannot really lead something like Torkoal Ice Rider, because then my Torkoal is immediately susceptible to a Moongeist Beam, and I want to have Torkoal in the Trick Room. Urshifu dies to Moonblast. If I lead Indeedee, he can just always click Cormine Taunt. If I lead Smeargle, I can at least play the game a little bit. Raging Bolt is also not good as a lead, and that's why I had to lead with Smeargle and Kelly Ice, because that gives me the most wiggle room and the most options to play the game. We see an Ability Shield Rainance Tornadus and a Screamtail, but those two are not really relevant because if he doesn't bring Rillaboom, he can never change the terrain and never go for Fake Out, which helps me a ton. Sturdy Ogre Cornerstone is obviously really good in the matchup because I have a Calyrex Ice, which cannot defensively Terra out of Ivy Cudgel, and Lunala is obviously a must-have pick, and Taunt Incin with Rocky Helmet is very good as well. So going into this, I knew that he will always pick the same for Pokemon. But I was thinking if I could change something up. Maybe I could lead with Urshifu, and if he leads Lunala and Incineroar, I can go for Terra Grass maybe. But for game 1, I wanted to go with my usual game plan with Calyrex Ice and Smeargle. And from the Swiss stage, I already knew that his Lunala outspeeds my Smeargle. So the problem is that I cannot safely go for Fake Out and then Spore in the next turn. And if I go for Fake Out into Incin, I lose my Sash, and then if I set up Trick Room, what I do, I am in Flare Blitz range for the from the Incineroar. But I decided to still do it. I didn't Terra because I knew he would not click War Moongeist Beam because he loses way too much momentum if I either click Follow Me or Terra. I Terra the Kelly Ice in the matchup always anyway, so I could have just done it, but I wanted to be a little cheeky because I thought maybe I can keep the Terra for the Torkoal. Spoiler, I can't, because here I have to break the Shadow Shield from Lunala to be in the game, and I knew that he would Flare Blitz my Smeargle slot and Moongeist be my Calyrex. I can obviously switch into Indeedee with my Calyrex, but I just set up the Trick Room. I want to use the Trick Room as best as possible, and that is with a Torkoal Ice Rider board. And as you can see, my play works because first of all, he doesn't Terra. That is for sure, because why should he go Terra Fairy in that situation? He could go Terra Water and Instant if he is scared of a close combat, but close combat doesn't want a KO, so he doesn't have to do it yet. And we see no Protect, but a critical hit with Glacial Lance. And that crit puts the Lunala maybe in range for a +1 Glacial Lance at that point, but unfortunately we are not +1. We also see the Moongeist Beam, and it does 106 HP, a little more than half. And in this situation now, I threaten a double knockout with Eruption Glacial Lance. But then I thought, is Incineroar in range of Eruption and Glacial Lance? Probably not. I could go for Eruption close combat, but if he attacks with Lunala, it's really bad. And that's why I go for a mid-ground play that covers everything. Because he is very likely to click Protect Parting Shot, I thought, and it worked. And even if he didn't click Protect, he can only KO one of my Pokemon, and then I get Indeedee in and I get Terrain Control if he decides to go to Rillaboom. But instead, we see that my play worked perfectly. I pick up the Instant with Glacial Lance, and now I'm in a very, very good spot with Torkoal and Kelly Ice. His Lunala just protected, so now it is in range for Weather Ball plus Glacial Lance. And I think we will see a play that was really, really crazy from Eric, but also really well done. And I made a play. I think in hindsight, I should have just clicked Weather Ball Protect, Weather Ball into Lunala plus Protect, and then next turn I can Glacial Lance switch. The problem is that the Trick Room ends soon, and that's why I go for the switch immediately and Glacial Lance. I think what Eric could have done is to click Terra Fire, Fake Out. Even if I switch into Indeedee, he can KO my Kelly Eyes with Moongeist Beam, Terra Fire, Fake Out, Moongeist Beam, and then in the next turn he has Protect, U-turn into a Cornerstone, and then he has just Ivy Cudgel, Moongeist Beam spam. And he didn't click Fake Out, he clicked U-turn instead. Very aggressive play from his side, and it worked out because I played it safe. Like the Indeedee switch plus Glacial Lance is just the most obvious thing I can do, and he punished that perfectly with U-turn, Moongeist Beam. And I lose my Calyrex, and since I only have one turn of Trick Room left, it's really tough to get into the game or to get back into the game. And that's why I think if I click Weather Ball, Protect, I'm in a better spot, because then next turn I have Glacial Lance, switch into Indeedee, or switch into Smeargle into Follow Me Glacial Lance. I get Grassy Terrain Recovery with my Ice Rider. Maybe I survive a second Moongeist Beam that way. And that's why this Indeedee switch Glacial Lance was not the best play. And now I'm really thinking, I know I have one Trick Room turn left. I can go into Smeargle and then do something like decorate my Indeedee, but no, not really. And the problem is, if I switch Torkoal back to Smeargle now and then go for Follow Me Trick Room, maybe I survive the Moonblast with Indeedee. When he has Grassy Terrain, he just clicks Spiky Shield attack. Maybe he loses Lunala, but then he has Fake Out Ivy Cudgel, and I always lose the game. So what my plan instead was to maybe survive the Ivy Cudgel, and just maybe he goes for Moonblast as well, because here he can always go for a double attacked. If I switch into Smeargle and click Heatwave, then next turn he KOs my Smeargle with Ivy Cudgel, and he has a Moongeist Beam into Torkoal. But now I thought, okay, maybe I survive the Ivy Cudgel, and if I get a Heatwave burn onto Ogerpon, I win the game. If I get a crit, I can also win the game if I win a 50-50 against Rillaboom afterwards, because he KOs Indeedee, I go to Smeargle, and then I can fake out either Cornerstone or Rillaboom. If I fake out Cornerstone and he goes for Spiky Shield, I lose. If I fake out Rilla and he goes for Spiky Shield, I win. It would be a pure 50 if I get a critical hit here and he KOs the Indeedee. because when I have Smeargle, he has Rillaboom, we get in and the same turn, and that's what I was hoping for. I really thought everything through, and I decided in the end it's Follow Me Heatwave, and as you can see, he clicks Ivy Cudgel and gets the KO, and that way I could not win the game anymore. He goes for Moongeist Beam, and you know what? It was a 37% chance that the Ivy Cudgel KOs my Indeedee at that point, but it didn't matter because Eric was super smart and clicked Moongeist Beam instead of Moonblast. Because let's say my Indeedee survives that. It was in my favor, but let's say my Indeedee survives that. Then Lunala moves. Moongeist Beam goes also into Indeedee, and then I KO the Lunala with my Torkoal. But then the next turn, he has Rillaboom and Cornerstone on the field. And he can always click Grassy Glide into my Indeedee slot that is very low, and Ivy Cudgel into my Torkoal slot. If I stay with Indeedee, he gets a double knockout. If I switch with Torkoal, he gets a double knockout. If I switch with Indeedee, he doesn't get a double knockout because my Smeargle survives a Grassy Glide, but he knocks out the Torkoal with Ivy Cudgel, and then I have 3 HP Smeargle and 3 HP Indeedee against Cornerstone and Rilla, and I would set up the Psychic Terrain so I can also not go for Fake Out with my Smeargle, so I would always lose the game because I can just not beat Rillaboom and Cornerstone, but that's only because he clicked Moongeist Beam. If he clicked Ivy Cudgel Moonblast and I survive the Ivy Cudgel with my Indeedee, then we play a Fake Out 50-50. Which slot do I Fake Out with my Smeargle? So that was actually a really, really interesting turn, and I gotta highlight that Eric clicked Moongeist Beam. I assume he knew that Ivy Cudgel does not necessarily KO, but instead of greeding for the KO with Moonblast, he clicked Moongeist Beam instead because that was a guaranteed win. So big credits to Eric for seeing that in such a short amount of time, because I can imagine that a lot of players, if they knew that Ivy Cudgel does not pick up a KO, they would have clicked Moonblast, but it's better to not KO the Indeedee there. And you might say, what if I click Heatwave Psychic and get a double knockout? He clicked Ivy Cudgel into the Torkoal probably. So does he click Ivy Cudgel into Torkoal? Because if I switch Torkoal into Smeargle and click Trick Room, then I have Indeedee and Smeargle, Indeedee and Torkoal in the Trick Room. But then he can click Protect with Lunala and attack with Cornerstone, get Rillaboom in, Fake Out my Torkoal, Call Mind again, Protect again, get Grassy Terrain recovery, get Leftovers recovery, then again Grassy Terrain recovery, Leftovers recovery, and then he KOs my Indeedee with Moonblast, and then he KOs my Torkoal with Moongeist Beam, because after the next Protect, the Trick Room would end. So I think he clicked Ivy Cudgel into Torkoal and Moongeist Beam into the same slot. Even though I only have a normal type in the back, and if I don't click Follow Me, it also gets redirected, but I explained why Moongeist Beam, even though Moongeist Beam never does anything unless I click Follow Me and the Ivy Cudgel actually KOs, was the best play. I hope you understood why he clicked Moongeist Beam. Maybe he just thought Ivy Cudgel KOs and just Ivy Cudgel Moongeist Beam, but that's like what I expect in the finals. This kind of thinking about how the next 3 turns will play out. I mean, it's Eric Rios. He never lost the finals before, he told me. He was in 5 finals, EUIC finals 2022 and 4 regional or special event finals, and he never lost. So he told me that afterwards, not before the set. But I knew that in game 2, I had to do something differently. And there were some issues with the stream. But in the Swiss stage, he always used Fake Out with his Incineroar into my Smeargle. And we saw in this game 1 that the Incineroar got flinched before the Lunala moved, which means he tried to fake out again. So I just said, okay, you always fake out at my Smeargle and it worked well every single time. So you are going to do it again. I have to make aggressive plays so that I can win the game. And that's why I decided to click Trick Room, switch into Torkoal, because if he clicks Fake Out into that slot, I'm in a perfect position. And these legs will be gone in a little bit. And he decided to click Fake Out into the Torkoal slot and Core Mind, just as I expected. And then now I can click Eruption Glacial Lands and win the game pretty much. If he clicks Protect though, I'm in a bad spot. Because if he clicks Protect with Lunala and switches Insim with Parting Shot into Villa, I'm in a really, really bad position. And for me, I didn't think about Eruption Close Combat as an option. For me, I just saw Eruption Glacial Lands, and that's why I was, as you can see, I go Terrafire so that I don't die to Moongeist Beam or Flare Blitz from the Incin. But in my eyes, he would always click not the Terra on Incin, but keep the Terra for the Rillaboom. And we see Terra Water here, and as you can see in the cam, I was really upset. But it made sense because Incin dies to Eruption Close Combat, and Earth Power Glacial Lands, as you can see, probably doesn't pick up the KO, but he probably read me clicking Glacial Lands Close Combat, and keeping Incineroar alive is better for him. And yeah, that's why we are in a really, really bad spot now, because he can Parting Shot my Torkoal. He obviously doesn't Parting Shot my Calyrex because that wouldn't work because of a Clear Amulet. And here he makes a small misplay, I think, because he goes to Rillaboom and gives me Grassy Terrain. I think he could have always switched into Ogerpon here and then just go for Protect Spiky Shield and lose nothing that way. But now we see that the Moongeist Beam did 100 HP. Now I have 119, and I thought, okay, it is very unlikely that he can KO my Ice Rider here. So I can just click Glacial Lands, switch to Indeedee, because here I already thought 3 turns ahead. We will talk about it, about a really, really, really key turn after this one. If he decides to stay with Rillaboom, I just win the game, because then next turn I have Glacial Lands, follow me spam, but he makes a really, really good play and switches back to Incineroar. And I gotta say that this Incineroar was not physically defensive as I expected it to be. It was instead very specially defensive, as you can see in the damage. But yeah, now we see the Moongeist Beam, and does it KO my Calyrex? No, I survived with 1 HP. The first Moongeist Beam was the lowest roll, and this was the highest roll. If you wanna know what the chances were that Moongeist Beam picks up Calyrex after 1 turn of Grassy Terrain, it was a 42% chance that it KOs. So with crit odds twice, it's around 50, but still a little bit in my favor that I survive Moongeist Beam into Grassy Terrain into Moongeist Beam from +1 Lunala. But here, okay, this is the turn that nobody really understood. Everybody said, yo, Eric has a play that wins him the game every time, and that is fake out my Kelly and switch into Rillaboom, because that way he can reset the terrain and then Fake Out would work. But I was fine if that happens, because I switch Indeedee to Torkoal, okay? And Eric probably knew that as well, because, okay, he stays. I just want to tell you what happens if he decides to go for the Fake Out switch play. If he goes for Fake Out switch, I have Torkoal in, I lose Calyrex, I get Indeedee in immediately. He has Rillaboom and Rillaboom and Incin on the field. in Psychic Terrain, and I still have a turn of Trick Room. So what I can do is that I click Eruption with Torkoal and switch my Indeedee immediately into Smeargle. I get a double KO, unless he switches into Cornerstone with one of the Pokemon. But he cannot stop Follow Me Eruption into Follow Me Eruption afterwards. I thought about everything. I thought about switch Willa to Cornerstone, toss Incin, then go back to Willa, and then win a mind game. But I can just click Fake Out myself then, or I can also just switch into Indeedee, click Follow Me with Smeargle, Smeargle dies, and then I have Indeedee and Torkoal. I can just click Follow Me Eruption. You know, it was not losable for me if I position myself that way. And that's why Fake Out, switch into Willaboom was not a play for him at all. And everybody said switch Fake Out wins him the game, but they didn't understand that then my Torkoal is positioned really well. I could also click Protect with Ice Rider, and then next turn switch Torkoal back into Indeedee Glacial Lance, get a double knockout, then I have Follow Me with Indeedee, click Trick Room with Ice Rider, and then with a second Trick Room with a full life Torkoal and then Kelly Ice, even with 1 HP, I win the game. And that's why Fake Out switch was not an option for him. And now we only have one turn of Trick Room left. And a lot of players would just greed for the KO with Glacial Lance Eruption. And mathematically, it's not a bad play. But I knew that Eric would attempt a double protect. And with Ogerpon, he will always click Spiky Shield. That's what I at least hoped for. And even if he doesn't do that, next turn I have Follow Me Eruption. So it is fine if he doesn't do that. So let's see. He decides to go for a double protect and he gets it, which is a little unfortunate. But since he attempts the Spiky Shield with Ogerpon as well, I'm still in a good spot. And now I have to make a decision. Do I want to set up Trick Room or do I want to set up a Glacial Lance? And I decided to not click Trick Room here, because let's say I click Trick Room. What if he clicks Moonblast into Smeargle, breaks my Sash, and switches Ogerpon to Rillaboom? Then his Lunala would get Grassy Terrain and Leftovers Recovery. Then he can Protect again, get it again. And I know that I can just click Glacial Lance, switch into Indeedee, but if he goes for switch into Ogerpon and then survives the Glacial Lance and KOs my Calyrex with Moongeist Beam, it can still get super tricky. And that's why instead I really wanted to take out the Lunala, because if I KO the Lunala, I just win the game on the spot. So I go for Glacial Lance and I knock out the Lunala, and now he has no chance of winning, because I knew how much an Ivy Cudgel does, and even Ivy Cudgel crit does not KO my Indeedee because I'm max physically defensive. He cannot go for Terra Walk anymore on the Ogerpon. I have the terrain advantage, and so his only way to knock out Indeedee would be a Power Whip crit, or like let's say to knock out Indeedee with Ogerpon. But if he clicks Power Whip, he dies to Rocky Helmet, and then yes, Ogerpon knocks out Indeedee, Indeedee knocks out Ogerpon, Rillaboom knocks out Calyrex, but then we have Rillaboom against Torkoal, and my Torkoal was still healthy enough. He does not have Terra Fire on the Rillaboom available anymore, and that's why he cannot win by any means. He misses the Power Whip, but it did not matter at all, because he would have died to the Rocky Helmet, and Torkoal would have 1v1 the Rillaboom in case he crits the Indeedee. So I hope you understand. I think his only play was to go for Ivy Cudgel and somehow hope that it KOs, because Ivy Cudgel doesn't deal contact and ignores the Rocky Helmet, and I clicked Trick Room just to have a little bit of more time thinking about game 3, because this game 2 I only won because I made a very aggressive switch in in turn 1, and I survived on 1 HP. I did not know what the exact role was back then. In hindsight, it was in my favor, but I did not want to go for hard read in turn 1 into survive the role again, because this is just not consistent. So for game 3, I really re-evaluated all my options. Should I maybe lead with Urshifu, because Urshifu can threaten a KO on both Incin and Lunala, but I am also threatened by a Moonblast, and I don't want to Terra my Urshifu because I really want to Terra my Kelly Ice. So I figured things out. I thought about literally every kind of combination. I thought about Kelly Ice Raging Bolt lead, Kelly Ice in DD, Urshifu in DD, Urshifu Torkoal. I literally combined every single option together, but in the end, I just saw that Smeargle Ice Rider is just the best option, but I could change my game plan, because I realized that if I just spam Glacial Lance, I can also win the game. I don't need to click Trick Room that much, because Glacial Lance spam is also really good, and I have double follow me. So I changed my plan and I clicked Spore, because that way I can force him to use Fake Out into my Smeargle. He saw that it didn't work in game 2, so maybe he goes for Fake Out into Calyrex instead, and then I get a free Spore into Lunala. Or what if he goes for Taunt, Call Mind, then I am faster than the internet, I still get the Spore off. So that's why I decided to click Spore Glacial Lance. And unfortunately we see the Fake Out, good play by Eric. But as I said, my game plan was to just use the Calyrex Ice to just spam Glacial Lance. And now I thought about, okay, he could Moongeist Beam the Kelly Ice, but then he's very susceptible to Follow Me and Spore. I can click Spore Glacial Lance here. And I knew I needed every single Follow Me user within DD and Smeargle, and that's why I go for this aggressive switch, which immediately, I think I always lose the game if he goes for Moongeist Beam into Calyrex here. But I just thought, okay, I have a Smeargle on the board, Follow Me is obvious, Spore is obvious, even Decorate would be bad, because with Decorate Glacial Lance, I would KO the Lunala, if he targets my Ice Rider. Then I get the Decorate off, and I get a Glacial Lance off, and then next I just have Follow Me Glacial Lance, I go in DD, Follow Me Glacial Lance with my +2 Ice Rider, he has no way to win anymore. And that's why I expected him to Moonblast my Smeargle slot, and it worked perfectly, because he clicked Taunt on top of that, and now I just have to make sure that I can position myself well to beat Eric, to beat the Lunala, and that's why I thought, okay, I can switch Torkoal here. If he doesn't click Protect with Lunala, he probably dies to Glacial Lance, and I switch into Indeedee, because if I switch into Indeedee, yes, he can Parting Shot that slot, but he can only Parting Shot to either Rillaboom or Ogerpon. If he Parting Shots to Rillaboom, he gets Grassy Terrain, but I get the KO on Rillaboom, and then I can just click Glacial Lance, Trick Room in the next turn, and he cannot win, because he can, yes, he can go back to Instant, but he cannot Fake Out Calyrex and Taunt my Indeedee at the same time, so I would just win. And if he goes to Cornerstone, I can also just set up Follow Me Glacial Lance, go Smeargle, Follow Me Glacial Lance, or Fake Out the Cornerstone first, Glacial Lance, and then Follow Me Glacial Lance. But that's why I thought, okay, I can go into Indeedee, because if he goes for Parting Shot, I win the game, and if he goes for Flare Blitz, it's gotta be into my Calyrex. Why would you Flare Blitz with Torkoal at that point? Because Torkoal is in range for Lunala, and I did not want to KO the Instant. As I said, I wanted to either KO the incoming Pokemon or get Ogerpon to the Sturdy, or keep the Instant on the field, and it worked, because he clicked Protect and Flare Blitz into my Kelly Ice. And now I'm in a position which is very good for me, because What I can do technically is Helping Hand Glacial Lance to guarantee a knockout on Lunala. But I can also just click Follow Me Glacial Lance, because if he uses Parting Shot again with Incin, if he gets Cornerstone in, next turn he cannot stop Follow Me Trick Room, and then I just ball with Calyrex Torkoal, I can just spam Eruption Glacial Lance. So he cannot really go for Parting Shot here, but if he clicks Flare Blitz, he dies to the Rocky Helmet, and then I have single target Glacial Lance. So that's why I go for Follow Me Glacial Lance. I thought about every single option, but it was clear that Follow Me Glacial Lance is just the best path I can go for. And Eric, I think his best play is still to go for Moonblast and Parting Shot. But if he goes for Moonblast and Parting Shot, he loses if I just click Glacial Lance, Trick Room, Glacial Lance, Psychic, Helping Hand, Glacial Lance. I think Moonblast Flare Blitz actually was the best play. And he goes for Moonblast. Obviously, since he clicked Moonblast, what I also could have done is switch back to Torkoal and toss with Torkoal. But doesn't quite work if he Flare Blitzes with Calyrex, because when I have Torkoal Calyrex, and that's not easy because then I also don't KO the Lunala here, because the Incin would not die to the Rocky Helmet, and then I only have a spread Glacial Lance. But yeah, instead I KO the Incin because of Recoil and Rocky Helmet, and now there's no way that Lunala survives this Glacial Lance. So I click Glacial Lance, and boom, we pick up the Lunala. And based on the other games, on the other 5 games we already played, I had the suspicion that he has Rilla and Cornerstone in the bag. Even if he had something like Tornadus. Tornadus doesn't do anything here, and Screamtail is also fine because I can click Follow Me Trick Room into Glacial Lance Eruption. So I was fine with whatever it is, and that's why I click Smeargle here. And I can win the game immediately if I get the read right now. If I click Fake Out into Ogapon and he attacks, this is good. If I click Fake Out into Spiky Shield, this is bad, because then I get chip damage. But I just said, okay, Smeargle, I trust you, and maybe he doesn't click Spiky Shield. He clicks Spiky Shield, and this is a phenomenal play by Eric again, because if I fake out Willa, I instant win, but if I fake out Willa and the Cornerstone attacks, I lose. And Spiky Shield fake out is such a bad play, you might say, because it never makes sense to click Spiky Shield fake out. But in this situation, it was the best play possible, because with the Spiky Shield, he gets the extra damage on Smeargle, and he still has to deny Trick Room from Kelly Ice, and that's why he had to fake out the Kelly Ice. So he made the best play possible, and now I decide to click Trick Room instead of Glacial Lance, because yes, he can get a quadruple protect afterwards, but if he clicks Terra Fire on the Rillaboom and I click Glacial Lance, I lose the game on a 50-50, but it's very likely that I lose the game. So now it only comes down to if Smeargle survives this Grassy Glide or not. I click Follow Me. He goes for Grassy Glide. And I survive with 7 HP. And you can see the pop-off. We calced it afterwards, and there was no chance for him to KO the Smeargle there. Only with a critical hit, but there was no roll. He got one of the highest rolls possible, and now I can still lose, because if he gets a quadruple protect with Ogapon, then it's a 50-50 which slot he Ivy Cudgels, because if he Ivy Cudgels Torkoal and I click Close Combat, I win. If he Ivy Cudgels Kelly Ice and I click Close Combat, I lose. If he clicks Ivy Cudgel into Torkoal, I protect, he wins. And if he clicks Ivy Cudgel into Kelly Ice and I protect, he loses. So it's a pure 50 if he gets a quadruple protect. So I click Glacial Lance here, knock out with Rillaboom, And now I obviously locked myself into Earth Power because it's my strongest move into Cornerstone. And I also decided to just click Glacial Lance here because I didn't want to take Spiky Shield damage, because I thought maybe if I get all the Grassy Terrain recovery after the next 3 protects, maybe I can survive even a Terra Fire, Terra Walk Ivy Cudgel. But he doesn't even get the double, and that way I was able to win the set. And I really want to highlight the key turns in the set. One of them was switching Smeargle to Torkoal to take the Moonblast in game 3, because when I had this double follow me active, without Smeargle in the end I would have always lost, because I was never able to get the Trick Room up. And in game 2, the turn 1, switching Torkoal into the Fake Out and setting up Trick Room was also really key, as well as surviving the double Moongeist Beam, as well as the predict of the double protect with Lunala, where I switch into Smeargle and then KO the Lunala afterwards. So these were really key turns, but I also want to highlight Eric's turn again, where he clicked Moongeist Beam, knowing that he is not allowed to click Ivy Cudgel Moonblast and KO the Indeedee, because that would result in a 50-50, and he went for a play that had a guaranteed outcome. In general, he had some really good turns in game 2 with a Terra Water on my Earth Power as well. It was really a back and forth, and I think both of us played that well, but I just want to highlight that the turn where he had Fake Out, switch to Willa as an option, this one, since I switched Indeedee to Torkoal, he would have lost regardless. That's something I really want to make clear, because everybody said Fake Out switch into Willa would have won the game, but that is just not the case. Sometimes you have to think 2 to 4 turns ahead, and that's why I like Trick Room, because I still struggle to think 6, 7, 8 turns ahead, and that's why I don't like setup balance with like Cormine, Terrapagos or Nasty Plot Shadow Rider, because you have to think so far ahead with those teams. But Hard Trick Room was a good call, because I can create my game plan just for the next 5 turns, and when the game either ends, I'm in a super good position, so I win anyways, or I lose in that time. So that's why I really liked Hard Trick Room as a playstyle. And I also recommend it to you if you just want to learn how to create this game plans where you think 2, 3, 4, 5 turns ahead and win the game that way. And that's why this Indeedee was so important, to just go in, go out, go in, go out, go in, go out, and not just stay with Indeedee as a follow me bot. Instead, it was a terrain bot. I hope I made everything clear. If you still have any questions about the set, about certain calcs, about certain turns, feel free to ask me in the comments. I will happily answer that. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this kind of video. It's a little different than the others. A small analysis can help everyone to get better. And yeah, that being said, I hope I will see you in the next videos as well. And let me know if I should do more of this analysis kind of stuff, because I think it helps me to get better, it helps you to get better, so it's definitely an option for the future as well. That being said, I will see you next time. Bye bye.